Today, you're going to learn everything you need to know regarding linking and navigation within Next.js. We're going to cover how the link component works, how the useRouter hook works, and then overall how navigation works in Next.js just generally when it comes to prefetching, soft navigation, hard navigation, so on and so forth. So we're first going to do a conceptual overview of these different concepts that I think you should know using the Next.js docs here, and then we're going to go into an example of where I get a demo application going and show you how the link component works, the useRouter hook works. Maybe we'll use like the usePathname hook to show the active path and different things like that as well. So first up here, Next.js has both server-centric and client-side navigation or routing. It supports instant loading states, concurrent rendering, meaning that navigation maintains client-side state, avoids expensive re-renders, is interruptible, and doesn't cause race conditions. And it says the two ways to navigate, as I mentioned, is with the link component and the useRouter hook here. So first up here, we have the link component, and the link component is a React component that extends the HTML element. And it provides prefetching, which we'll cover what exactly that means and the default behavior here in a sec, and client-side navigation between routes. To use the link component, you import it from next/link here, and then you can use it within your application like you would use any other React component. But you do need to provide it a mandatory prop here called href, and that is going to be the path that you want this link to link to. And there are also optional props you can pass to the link component. So let's check those out here. So if we go deeper into this link component and the other props that it offers, you see that you have the href prop, which it is required and it is the path that you want to link to here. And then you can also pass a prop called replace, and it's just a Boolean. So you either add this prop or you don't add it, and adding it sets it to true. Not adding it sets it to false. And you also have the prefetch prop. And one thing that's good to know is the A tag attributes such as class name or target_blank can be added to the link props as well. Now for the href, it's the path or URL to navigate to, and you can see them using that here. But one thing that you can also do with it is pass an object to the href attribute, and you can provide a path name property, which is the same thing as providing this path name right up here, just where you want to navigate to. But you can also pass query parameters using the query property, and then that can be an object of query parameters that you want to have here. So here, if you pass query, and then an object with a name property and a test value, you get the query parameter of name is your property, and that is set to a value of test. Okay, so this is how you would add query parameters to your next link here. And then you can also pass the replace Boolean, and this defaults to false, and this would just replace the current history state instead of adding a new URL into the browser's history stack. So instead of adding a new URL on the stack, it just replaces the current history there. And you would add this by just adding the replace prop, and that is all you need to do. Adding it just sets this to true. Now you also have the prefetch prop here, and this will default to true. So when this is true, Next.js will prefetch this page when the link component is in the viewport, initially or through a scroll. And it will preload whatever your href is pointing to. So it will preload that path first. So here in this example, if we don't set prefetch to false here, as soon as this link with this dashboard href is in view, it is going to fetch the dashboard page in the background so that when the user clicks on this link, it is almost instant. So this is a really cool feature. But if for whatever reason you don't want this to occur, you can set prefetch to false. And also be aware that this is only enabled in production. When you're kind of in development, you're not going to see this prefetching behavior. And we're going to skip over a couple of these examples because I'm going to show some examples here once we get the demo app going. But there's also this scroll to an ID behavior. So similar to when you use an A tag, you can do hashtag and then some ID, and it automatically scrolls to that ID of the element when this link is clicked. You can do the same thing with this link component. If you use hashtag and then some ID within your path, it is going to scroll to the element that contains that ID. So it's going to scroll to that element. And the default behavior of the link component is to scroll to the top of the route segment that has changed. And Next.js does this scrolling to an ID in their own docs here. So if I hover over this, you can see it has this little link icon here. If I click on this, it scrolls useRouter hook to the top of the page. And then if I come here, it's going to scroll this to the top of the page. So what it's doing here is likely using this link component in which it's putting hashtag and using an ID here. And the ID is probably the title of this element because it's scrolling to the top of the page here with the title of this element. And then moving down here to the useRouter hook, the useRouter hook allows you to programmatically change routes. So this would be similar to if you've used React Router DOM, you can use the use history hook and they do history.push to a certain path programmatically. You can do a very similar thing with this useRouter hook here. So you can see that for the useRouter hook, you can import it from Next Navigation. Now, you do need to use this within a client component instead of a server component. So at the top of your file, you need to put the string use client. So you can use this useRouter hook. And then once you have the useRouter hook imported, you can call the useRouter hook, and that's going to return a router. And this router is going to be an object with certain properties and methods on it. So the probably primary one that you're going to use is the push method. So if you call router.push and then you pass in a certain path name to the push function, then that is going to navigate you to whatever route you put within the push function here. So here they are placing /dashboard inside router.push, and that is going to navigate them on click when someone clicks on this dashboard button to the dashboard page. Now the router also has a couple other properties here that are helpful to know. So you have router.push, and it will just be a client-side navigation to the provided route. But you also have router.replace, and this is going to be a client-side navigation to the provided route, but it's not going to add a new entry into the browser stack. So this would be similar to using a link component and setting that replace Boolean prop on that link component. It's not going to add anything to the browser stack. It's just going to replace it. You can also do router.refresh, which will effectively refresh your current route. You could do router.prefetch, which will allow you to prefetch the provided route that you pass into this prefetch. And then you can also do router.back and router.forward. So forward is going to go forward in the browser stack. Back is going to go back in the browser stack. It would be similar to clicking on the back button and the forward button in your kind of everyday navigation of your browser. So that kind of covers some of the other props for the useRouter here, but the main one that you're going to be using is going to be that push function. Now, let's also kind of cover here a little bit more on how navigation works in Next.js. So a route transition is initiated using either a link or the useRouter hook, the router.push. The router updates the URL in the browser's address bar, and the router avoids unnecessary work by reusing segments that haven't changed. For example, shared layouts that we covered in previous videos. And it uses these from the client-side cache. This is also called partial rendering. If the conditions of soft navigation are met, the router fetches the new segment from a cache rather than the server. If not, the router performs a hard navigation and fetches the server component payloads from the server. So that right there is an important concept to understand. Soft navigation versus hard navigation. Soft navigation is basically where you're going to navigate, but once you navigate, you are going to serve the kind of UI from your cache. But in hard navigation, you're going to serve your UI by making a request to the server and going to get that data. So soft navigation, serving it from the cache, hard navigation, going to the server and getting that data via a request. And then if created, loading UI is shown from the server while the payload is being fetched. The router uses the cached or fresh payload to render the new segments on the client. Now, a couple of things to know here regarding caching is that the new router has an in-memory cache client-side cache that stores the rendered result of server components. The cache is split by route segments, which allows invalidation at any level and ensures consistency across renders. As users navigate around the app, the router will store the payload of previously fetched segments and prefetched segments in the cache. This means for certain cases, the router can reuse the cache instead of making a new request to the server. This improves performance by avoiding refetching data and re-rendering components unnecessary. So Next.js does do these kind of caching optimizations kind of automatically to help improve your performance here. Now, sometimes you do need to invalidate the cache, and you might do this using server actions. We may cover this in future videos. Let me know in the comments below if you would like me to. It is in alpha, so it's like not even in beta yet. So it's a very early feature, but we'll probably definitely cover it once it's more stable. But yeah, let me know if you would like me to cover that. And then touching on prefetching here as well, it's a way to preload a route in the background before it's visited. So that is all prefetching is preloading a certain route or some certain UI before it's visited and just doing this in the background. The rendered result of the prefetched route is added to the client-side cache, and this makes navigation to prefetched routes nearly instant. By default, routes are prefetched as they become visible in the viewport when using the link component. This can happen when the page first loads or through scrolling. Routers can also be prefetched using the prefetch method of the useRouter hook, and we kind of covered both of those earlier on. Now, one thing that's important to know here regarding static and dynamic routes is that if a route is static, all the server component payloads for the routes will be prefetched. Okay, so if the data is non-changing, then you can prefetch all that data beforehand because it's just static. But if the route is dynamic, the payload from the first shared layout down until the first loading JS file is prefetched. This reduces the cost of prefetching the whole route dynamically and allows instant loading states. So if you do have a dynamic route, Next.js is still going to prefetch as much as it can up until it gets to kind of the loading JS file of kind of the dynamic portion of that route there. And then here it covers soft navigation and hard navigation. We already covered this a bit on the differences between the two, but what are the conditions for soft navigation? Well, this is going to occur if the route you are navigating to has been prefetched and either doesn't include dynamic segments or has the same dynamic parameters as the current route. For example, the following route includes a dynamic team segment, so /dashboard/ square brackets team. The cached segments below /dashboard/ square brackets team will only be invalidated when the team parameter changes. So it will do a soft navigation if this team parameter stays the same. If this dynamic parameter here stays the same, it does a soft navigation. But if this changes, it'll do a hard navigation. So if you navigate from dashboard/team red to dashboard/team red, that's just going to be a soft navigation because this is the same parameter here. It can just use the cached response. It doesn't need to make another server request. But navigating from /dashboard/team red to /team blue, well, that's going to be hard navigation because your dynamic parameter here, it has changed. And it also mentions back and forward navigation. So using like the back and forward button of your browser, that is going to have a soft navigation behavior. And by default, Next.js will focus and scroll to the segment that's changed on navigation. So if you have a dynamic segment and part of that kind of segment has changed, it's going to automatically scroll to what has changed there. Okay. So now that we've kind of covered this conceptually, let's spin up a Next.js app quick here and show you how this works actually in practice. So I'm here in Next.js and I'm just going to create a demo app here. And I'm going to do this using npx create next app at latest. So now it's going to take me through a few different prompts here to get this set up. I'm going to just call this linking. And I don't want to use TypeScript for now. I will use ESLint, no Tailwind, no SRC directory, and I am going to use the router, and I don't want to customize the default import. So we're going to import all this here. and then kind of get into a demo of how these different kind of navigation works. So first I'm going to open my project here. And now that this is opened up, we're going to close out of all these kind of initial little warnings and stuff here. So what I want to do first is let's just create a few different pages here and then create like a nav bar header and then navigate between those different pages to show you how the link component works. And then we'll add a few buttons to programmatically navigate using the useRouter hook. And then we can also use the usePathname to show some different styles based on what path we're at. Okay, so let's kind of cover that here. So within my app, I'm going to add a new folder. Let's just do dashboard, and then I'm going to add a page.jsx file. So this is going to add a new route in our Next.js app called dashboard. And I'm going to export a default function called dashboard. And I'm just going to return an H1 here that is dashboard page. And one thing I forgot is I need to export default function dashboard, not just export default dashboard. So now I'm going to copy this folder here, and I'm going to paste another folder within my app directory, but we're going to rename this and call this about. And then for the page.jsx, we're going to call this about and call this about page. So now we've created an about route path here. And then if I paste another folder here and I rename this, let's just do settings. And if I go to the page.jsx, we're going to rename this to a settings function, and it's going to be a settings page. So yeah, we don't have much content here, but we're going to just focus on navigation here. So we have our three different routes: /about, /dashboard, /settings. Now I want to add a navigation header to this route. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to also add a new folder here, and I'm going to call this components. Now, this is not going to be a publicly accessible folder unless I add a page.jsx file to this components folder, which I'm not going to do. I'm just going to keep my components in here. So I'm going to add a navigation.jsx component. And in here, we're going to export a default function called navigation. And what we're going to do is we're going to return a nav element. And this is going to return an unordered list. And here are going to be our nav links. But to do this, let's create an array of objects here where each object is going to contain a label and a path. And this is going to be used to map over and create our navigation links. So I'm going to say label is going to equal about, and then the path is going to be /about. And we're going to copy this object and do this a few more times here so we can create routes for our dashboard. And it's going to be /dashboard. And then we're also going to do settings. And it's going to be /settings. And then all we're going to need to do here is we're going to take our nav, and I name this navliv. Nav links is what I wanted to call it. We're going to take our nav links, and then we're going to call the .map method on this. We're going to automatically destructure the label and the path of those nav links. And then we are going to, I need to make sure to wrap this all in curly braces, so we are in JavaScript land here as well. And then what we're going to return here, well, we're going to return an li. And within this li, we're going to return a link component here from next link. So I've imported this, import link from next /link. And we're going to set the label as our content within this link. And then we're going to set the href that is going to equal our path. So when mapping over these nav links, the first one, the label is going to be set to about, and the path is going to be /about, and then dashboard /dashboard. So this should create different links for our kind of navigation component here. Now, let's go ahead and add some styles here, and we're just going to inline these here. And I'm going to do display, flex, justify, content, and we'll do space evenly. We'll add quite a bit of padding to this just so it's easier to see, of 50 pixels. And then we're also going to do the width is going to be 100 VW. And I think that's all I'll do for now, but I might want to do some more stuff here. And we're going to put this onto our unordered list here. So it does these styles to our list items. Now we're going to go to our layout.js here because we want to apply this navigation to all of our pages. And we're going to render out this navigation component here within layout.js. And then if I do npm run dev, I'm probably going to get errors because I wrote a lot of code there and rarely does it have that I don't write some bugs. So it looks like it has compiled here. So if I go to localhost 3000 and I refresh this page here, I do indeed see my kind of default Next.js app here, and I see my different links up top here. Now, I personally am not a fan of list style or the little bullet points. So we're going to do list style type is just going to be none here. And then we go back and it looks like this. So if we hover over these, we see it gives us cursor pointer because they are links. And then if we click on it, you see I get about page, I get dashboard page, and I get settings page. So that is literally how easy it is to set up navigation in your Next.js apps. You don't have to install React Router DOM and create the browser router and create your different paths and use your little switch with exact path equals this. No, none of that stuff. You can just add the next link and have navigation kind of out of the box here, which is super, super nice. So let's go back here and add a way to tell what page that we're on. So how about like when we're on the about page, we set this text of this about link to like blue. I don't know, but let's go ahead and do that. So in order to do that, we need to use the usePathname hook from Next.js. And to use that hook, we need to make this a client component. So at the top of this file, I'm going to set this to use client. And then I'm going to do const pathname is equal to use pathname. And I need to import use pathname, import use pathname. And I believe it's from next/navigation. So I'm importing use pathname from next navigation. And then when I call use pathname, it should give me the current path. But let's go ahead and console.log the path name. And pro tip here, use an object to console log things out so you get a nice label for what you console log. So if I go back here and I inspect my console, I did not want to open my recorder, my console. We're going to ignore all this. Let's go to the dashboard, and you see my path name here is dashboard. And here my path name is settings, path name about. So it does look like everything is working well here. So it's giving me my path name. So all I need to do here is for my list item here, let's do style and let's set the color. And if my path is equal to my path name, then I'm going to do a color of blue. Else we'll just not set a color. So my path name is going to give me my current path, and let's remove this console log. And then if that path name is equal to the path of one of my link components here, it's going to set the text to blue. So if everything is correct here, and I go back and I close my console, you'll see settings is blue here. If I go to about, that is blue. And you can see it's telling me the active page based on the path name returned from usePathname here. And that is working as expected here. So one last thing I'll show you here is now let's use the useRouter hook to programmatically navigate when we click on a button here. So let me go back here and let's go to my about page. And within this page, let's go ahead. Well, actually, I don't necessarily want to make this entire page a client component. So let's go ahead and add a component here to our components folder. And let's just do nav button.jsx. And this is going to be a client component because I'm going to use the useRouter hook within it. So I'm going to do export default function nav button. And we're going to take a label as well as a path as props here for this button. And what we're going to do is we're going to return just a button. And the button is going to have the label of label. And on click here, we're going to pass a function. And we're going to use the useRouter hook by calling. We're going to import that from nextRouter here. So I'm importing useRouter from nextRouter. That's returning my router. So all I need to do on click here is I need to call router.push. And then we're going to push to whatever path is passed into this nav button. So now if I go to my about page and I just return my nav button, I need to pass it a label of, let's link to my settings page. And then let's do a path is equal to /settings. Okay. So when I'm on my about page, I've now added a button that should link to my settings page. Let's go ahead and add this button to my dashboard as well. But here we will link to our about page and we'll go to /about. And I need to import my nav button. So let's see if I can get my auto import there, which I do. And then we'll go to our settings page and then we'll link to our dashboard from here. So here, switch this to dashboard, switch this to our dashboard path, and make sure to import our nav button here. So if I go back to my app here, you're going to see I do have an error. I actually think I know what I did here. This is a little bit of a gotcha, which is probably good that I ran into. So let's go back to our next button. And instead of importing this from nextRouter, you need to import it from next navigation. Okay. So this is actually pretty good that I messed that up. That's a pretty common thing to do. So now let's go back. Okay. And I do see my buttons now. So my settings page, let's see if I navigate to dashboard. And I do navigate to dashboard by clicking on this button. Dashboard page, I navigate to about page, I navigate to settings, so on and so forth. So that is how you can programmatically navigate using the useRouter hook. So this video covers everything you need to know regarding linking and navigation within Next.js, but stay tuned because future videos are going to cover route groups, dynamic routes, so on and so forth. So thanks for tuning into this, and I'll see you in that next one.